The federal government is defiantly sticking to its pledge to have the budget back in surplus next year, despite new claims that the deficit is much bigger than forecast. Deloitte Access Economics says the government's financial position has deteriorated significantly in the 6 months since it handed down its budget in May, and it should abandon the surplus pledge. Andrew Robertson reports.
Falling economic growth equals falling government revenue as companies and individuals pay less tax while spending goes up as more people claim unemployment benefits. On Friday, the Reserve Bank lowered its economic growth forecast. Today, Deloitte Access Economics supported that view.
Things are just a little more careful on the outlook out there. You can see that in jobs, you can see it in profits, you can see it in share markets.
Which is why Deloitte Access Economics believes the government is making no headway on its stated aim to bring the budget back to surplus in 2012-13. Back in May, the government was forecasting a deficit this financial year of $22.6 billion, with a surplus 12 months later of $3.5 billion. Deloitte Access Economics believes the real deficit this year will be $9 billion worse than forecast, dragging 2012-13 also into deficit by nearly $2 billion. It's for that reason that Chris Richardson believes the government should abandon its surplus pledge.
We're fighting for this in part because the public somehow believes that if a government gets the budget $1 in surplus, then they're economic geniuses, and $1 in deficit and they're dunces, and it just doesn't work that way.
The Treasurer isn't listening, though. He says the 2012-13 surplus is set in stone despite economic conditions getting tougher.
At a time of global economic turbulence, where there are developed countries all around the world that have implemented over a long period of time lax fiscal policy and are now paying the price for that in their real economy, it is really important that a country like Australia with such a strong economy demonstrates its capacity to put in place fiscal discipline.
Which sounds good in theory, but former New South Wales Treasury economist Dr Betty Conn-Walker says it's nonsense.
Whether the federal government has a $3.5 billion surplus or a $2 billion deficit is of no consequence in a $400 billion budget. We're talking about less than 1% of the $400 billion budget.
To achieve its goal of a budget surplus next financial year, the government is planning more spending cuts, a move which could further reduce economic growth. It's a position at odds with the Reserve Bank's decision to cut interest rates last week to support growth, and there are some who believe it may prompt the bank to cut again.
As we know, we've got this 2-speed, some say 3-speed economy, so we have got some soft spots in the economy, and if we try and pull the whole of the government sector back again, then we may find that we will have a very slowing economy.
As the Treasurer stuck to his script today on the budget surplus, so too did the opposition leader as he toured a factory in Melbourne.
You can't trust this government with the nation's finances.
And just as they want the government to change its position on the surplus, both Betty Conn and Chris Richardson would also like the opposition to change its position and make a meaningful contribution to the budget debate.